This is not a message you casually listen to. This is not background noise for your day. This is a red flag raised in the realm of the spirit, and it demands your full attention right now. Michael's red flag is not symbolic drama. It is an emergency signal. When heaven raises a red flag, it means something irreversible is approaching unless action is taken. This is why the words are so strong, so direct, and so urgent. Don't ignore this. Tragedy is not spoken to frighten you, but to awaken you. There is a silent tragedy forming, not loud, not chaotic, not obvious, but dangerously quiet. And quiet tragedies are the ones that cause the deepest tears later, because people never saw them coming. You are hearing this now because time is involved. Delay is involved. A window is involved. And once that window closes, regret often speaks louder than prayer. Many people believe tragedy always arrives with noise, with warnings, with visible collapse. But the most devastating losses often arrive wrapped in normalcy. Life continues. Routines continue. Smiles continue. Yet underneath, something vital is slipping away. That is why this is called a silent tragedy. It does not announce itself. It does not beg for attention. It waits for distraction, comfort, and delay to do its work. Michael's red flag is raised precisely because too many are calm when they should be alert, relaxed when they should be discerning, and postponing what must be addressed now. The urgency in this message is not emotional exaggeration. It is spiritual reality pressing against time. Act before it's too late is not a motivational phrase here. It is a line drawn between two outcomes. One path leads to intervention, protection, and correction. The other path leads to loss, confusion, and tears that could have been prevented. Heaven is not warning you after the tragedy. Heaven is warning you before it. That alone tells you mercy is still active. But mercy does not cancel responsibility. Mercy gives you a chance to move while movement still matters. This is why this message says it's an emergency. Emergencies are not handled tomorrow. They are handled now, because delay turns manageable situations into reversible ones. There are moments when the spiritual realm becomes intense, when signals are amplified because consequences are closer than they appear. This is one of those moments. Michael's red flag represents divine intervention trying to interrupt a trajectory. Something is heading in a direction it should not go. Something is drifting instead of being guided. Something is being tolerated instead of confronted. And the tragedy is not just what happens, but what could have been prevented if action was taken earlier. That is why the warning is sharp. That is why the tone is serious. That is why the message does not comfort first, but confronts. The phrase "open it now" is not random. It implies that something has already been placed before you. A door, a truth, a realization, a direction, an instruction. Many people sense it but avoid it. They feel it but delay it. They know something needs to be addressed, but they keep saying later. The danger is not ignorance. The danger is postponement. The tragedy grows in the space between knowing and acting. And when the message says, "or you will cry," it is not spoken as condemnation. It is spoken as prevention. Tears are not inevitable if obedience is immediate. This is why this message matters so deeply. You are not hearing this by accident. Messages like this do not randomly find people who have nothing at stake. This finds those standing at a threshold, those sensing pressure, those feeling an unexplainable heaviness, restlessness, or inner warning they cannot fully articulate. The red flag appears when you are close enough to danger for intervention to still work. It does not appear when everything is already lost. That alone should tell you there is still hope, but it is time-sensitive hope. Do not underestimate silent tragedies. They look harmless at first. They feel manageable. They convince you that nothing is urgent. But slowly, quietly, they drain peace, clarity, direction, and protection. By the time they are loud, the cost of reversal is far greater. That is why Michael's red flag is raised now, not later. Heaven sees the trajectory before the outcome becomes visible on earth. And when heaven warns, it is because love refuses to stay silent. As you listen to this, understand that urgency does not mean panic. It means precision. It means awareness. It means courage to face what you may have been avoiding. This message is not here to overwhelm you. It is here to position you. Something is being exposed not to shame you, but to save you. Something is being revealed not to scare you, but to stop you from walking into unnecessary sorrow. This is only the beginning. What comes next will make the red flag even clearer, and the silence even more dangerous if ignored. Pay attention to what you are feeling right now. That inner stirring is not coincidence. It is recognition. And if you stay open, what follows may be the very thing that changes your outcome before it's too late. There is a cost attached to delay, and it is far heavier than most people realize. Delay feels harmless because it does not scream. It whispers. It tells you that tomorrow will be better, that you have more time, that nothing bad has happened yet. But spiritually, delay is not neutral. It quietly sides with loss. The reason this message presses urgency so strongly is because delay is often the final permission tragedy needs to advance. Not action, not rebellion, not refusal, just waiting too long. This is why the warning says, don't ignore this. Ignoring is not always denial. Sometimes ignoring simply means postponing obedience. Many people assume that if something were truly dangerous, it would feel urgent automatically. But silent tragedies do not trigger panic. They create comfort. They lull the mind into thinking everything is under control. That is how they pass undetected. Delay feeds on routine. It hides inside busyness. It disguises itself as patience, logic, or even wisdom. But there is a difference between waiting on divine timing and hesitating when divine timing has already arrived. This is where many people misjudge the moment. They think waiting is faith, when in reality, waiting has become avoidance. The cost of delay is rarely paid immediately. It is paid gradually. First, clarity begins to fade. What once felt obvious becomes confusing. Then peace begins to thin out. What once felt stable starts to feel heavy. Eventually, strength drains without explanation. People often ask why they feel tired, unmotivated, or disconnected, not realizing they are carrying the weight of something they were meant to confront earlier. Delay creates spiritual debt. And like all debt, it accumulates interest over time. Heaven understands human fear, doubt, and hesitation. That is why warnings are repeated. But repetition does not mean permission to keep waiting. It means grace is still giving you another moment to respond. The phrase act before it's too late exists because there is a point where action becomes recovery instead of prevention. Recovery costs more. It hurts more. It takes longer. And sometimes, it comes with scars that did not need to exist. This message is trying to keep you in the realm of prevention, not restoration after damage. There are subtle signs that delay is already affecting you. You feel a quiet pressure that does not go away. You sense something unfinished pulling at your attention. You know a conversation, a decision, or a change needs to happen, yet you keep moving it down the list. The tragedy is not that you don't know. The tragedy is that you know and still wait. Silence grows louder in those moments. Not external silence, but internal resistance. And resistance is often fear wearing the mask of reason. This is why ignoring this warning is dangerous. Not because something bad is guaranteed to happen, but because something preventable is being allowed to grow. Heaven does not warn to accuse. Heaven warns to interrupt. Michael's red flag is an interruption to your normal flow. It is meant to disrupt comfort before comfort becomes captivity. It is meant to awaken discernment before discernment dulls. When warnings come, they are invitations to align, not threats to terrify. You may be thinking, I still have time. That thought alone should make you pause. Time is not just measured by clocks. It is measured by opportunity. And opportunity is not endless. There are moments when action carries unusual weight. Moments when obedience unlocks protection. Moments when courage closes doors that should never open. This is one of those moments. The longer you delay, the more strength it takes to move. That is why action feels easier now than it will later, even if it already feels uncomfortable. This message is also a call to accountability. Not guilt, not shame, but responsibility. Responsibility for your choices, your attention, your response. You are not powerless here. In fact, the very fact that you are hearing this means power is still in your hands. But power unused becomes permission for loss. Awareness without action is one of the most painful forms of regret. People often say, I knew something was wrong. That sentence usually comes after the damage, not before. This message is trying to remove those words from your future. If this message is stirring something inside you, do not brush it aside. Engage with it. Respond to it. One of the simplest yet most powerful ways to respond is to align yourself publicly and intentionally. Take a moment to like this video, not as a habit, but as a declaration that you are choosing awareness over avoidance. Share this message with someone who may also be delaying something critical, because warnings are not meant to be hoarded. And if this message resonates with you, leave a comment acknowledging it. When you engage, you are not just interacting with content, you are marking a moment of decision. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel so you stay connected to messages meant to keep you alert, protected, and aligned in critical times like this. What comes next will expose why delay feels so comfortable and why that comfort is exactly what makes the silent tragedy so dangerous. Stay present. What is about to be revealed may explain patterns you have been struggling to understand. The reason this tragedy is called silent is because it does not announce itself with chaos. It does not arrive with sudden collapse or visible destruction. It slips in quietly, wearing familiarity, blending into everyday life until it becomes almost invisible. That is what makes it so dangerous. Loud problems get attention. Silent ones get ignored. And by the time they finally speak, they speak through loss, regret, and tears. This is why this warning is coming now, before anything looks wrong on the surface. Because spiritually, something already is. A silent tragedy works by slowly disconnecting you from what once protected you. It dulls discernment little by little. It convinces you that small compromises are harmless, that missed moments don't matter, that delayed obedience has no consequence. Nothing feels dramatic at first. You still function. You still smile. You still move forward. But something underneath begins to weaken. Direction becomes less clear. Peace becomes thinner. Strength feels harder to access. And because it happens gradually, many people blame exhaustion, circumstances, or other people, never realizing they are facing a spiritual erosion. What makes this even more painful is that silent tragedies often happen to sincere people. People who care. People who believe. People who mean well. That is why this message is not accusatory. It is urgent. Heaven does not sound alarms to condemn the faithful. Heaven sounds alarms to protect them. Michael's red flag is raised not because you are failing, but because something is approaching that thrives on inattention. And the longer it goes unnoticed, the more it reshapes your life without permission. One of the most deceptive aspects of a silent tragedy is how reasonable it feels. It tells you to wait until you're ready. It tells you it's not the right time. It tells you things will naturally improve. But spiritual decline rarely feels like rebellion. It feels like comfort. It feels like settling. It feels like putting off what feels uncomfortable today in exchange for temporary peace. The problem is that temporary peace often leads to permanent damage when it replaces obedience. This is why the tragedy is described as coming your way. It is not fully here yet. It is approaching. That language matters. Approaching means interceptable, preventable, changeable. Heaven is revealing the path before the collision, not after. But interception requires awareness, and awareness requires you to take this seriously even if nothing looks wrong yet. The silence is not safety. The silence is strategy. There are moments when the spirit senses danger before the mind can explain it. You may feel a quiet unease, a repeated nod, a thought that keeps returning no matter how busy you are. That is not imagination. That is early warning. Silent tragedies are often stopped in these moments, not later. The problem is that many people override these signals with logic, distraction, or fear of change. And once those signals are ignored long enough, they become quieter. Not because the danger left, but because sensitivity faded. This is where the phrase "open it now" becomes critical. Something is trying to be revealed to you. A truth. A direction. A direction. A decision. But revelation requires openness. If you keep it closed, the tragedy continues its approach unhindered. If you open it, light enters. And light disrupts what hides in silence. You do not need to know everything. You only need to respond to what is being shown now. Obedience at the first stage prevents pain at the final stage. Before this message continues deeper, there is something important to understand. What you are hearing right now is not just information. It is alignment. And alignment spreads. When you respond to messages like this, you help ensure that others who are standing at their own silent crossroads also receive the warning in time. This is where the mission becomes shared. This message is reaching people because it is being carried forward. When you choose to support this work, you are not supporting a channel. You are helping light reach places where silence has been doing damage unchecked. Scripture speaks of seed sown into good soil, of light set on a hill, of oil that keeps lamps burning through the night. This is that moment. I feel led to tell you directly, when you give into this mission, you are responding to a divine nudge, not a human request. What you release here becomes provision for others who need this warning before it's too late. Open the door now. Use Super Thanks. Become a member, or give through PayPal using the link in the description or the QR code on the screen. As you sow, I declare that clarity will increase in your life, protection will surround your household, and obedience will become easier than delay. Act now, because this is a moment of alignment, not later. The silence you are hearing about is not meant to scare you. It is meant to sharpen you. What comes next will expose exactly how this tragedy hides so well and why so many never realize what happened until they are already grieving. Hold on to this moment, because what follows may be the insight that shifts everything. Type I see the warning in the comments if this resonates with you. Lesson code 814 is now activated. There are moments when heaven becomes unusually active, when the spiritual atmosphere shifts and messages that were once subtle become unmistakably urgent. This is one of those moments. The reason the alarm is sounding now is not random, and it is not based on fear. It is based on timing. In the spiritual realm, timing determines whether a warning becomes a rescue or a report of loss. Michael's red flag is raised now because the window for prevention is still open, but it is narrowing. Heaven always speaks before consequences manifest, never after. That alone reveals the mercy behind this urgency. When heaven sounds an alarm, it is because something has reached a critical threshold. Not a breaking point yet, but a decision point. A moment where movement in one direction or another will determine the outcome. Many people assume divine warnings only come when disaster is imminent, but in truth, they often come when change is still possible. That is why this message feels intense. It is not announcing collapse. It is interrupting trajectory. Something was headed somewhere it should not go, and heaven stepped in. This is also why this warning could not have come earlier. Earlier, you may not have been able to hear it clearly. Your discernment may not have been sharpened yet. Your awareness may not have been ready. Warnings released too early are often dismissed. And warnings released too late are painful confirmations instead of helpful guidance. Heaven waits until the moment when you can recognize the weight of the message and still have the power to respond. That moment is now. Another reason the alarm is sounding is because resistance has been detected. Not open rebellion, but quiet resistance. The kind that says, "I'll deal with this later," or "it's not that serious yet." Spiritual resistance does not always look aggressive. Often, it looks passive. It looks like delay. And delay, as you've already heard, is one of the most effective tools silent tragedies use. Heaven does not ignore resistance. It confronts it with clarity. That is what this message is doing. There is also a protective dimension to this alarm. When heaven warns, it is not only because something dangerous is approaching, but because something valuable is at stake. Protection increases when value is recognized. Your peace, your calling, your future, your spiritual clarity, these things matter. They are not disposable. And when something threatens them, heaven responds. Michael's red flag represents divine protection being activated in advance, not after damage occurs. That should bring reassurance, even in the seriousness of this moment. Some people struggle with urgency because they associate it with panic. But divine urgency is different. It is calm, clear, and precise. It does not rush you into confusion. It calls you into focus. Panic scatters. Urgency aligns. This message is not pushing you to act blindly. It is asking you to act intentionally. To stop drifting. You stop postponing. To stop pretending that something you keep feeling can be ignored without consequence. Heaven is also sounding the alarm now because repetition has already occurred. Signals have been sent before this moment. Quiet nudges. Inner checks. Repeated thoughts. Subtle discomfort. When those signals are consistently ignored, the volume increases. Not out of anger, but out of love. Love refuses to stay silent when harm is approaching. That is why this message feels stronger than previous nudges. It is escalation, not accusation. There is another layer to this timing that many overlook. Collective moments matter. Sometimes warnings are not just personal, but communal. When patterns begin to repeat across many lives, heaven addresses them collectively. Distraction, compromise, delay, spiritual dullness. These are not isolated struggles right now. They are widespread. That is why messages like this are emerging more frequently. Not because things are hopeless, but because intervention is still possible on a broader scale. This is also why the language of emergency is used. Emergencies are defined not just by danger, but by limited response time. You may still be safe, but not indefinitely. You may still have clarity, but not if ignored. You may still feel conviction, but conviction fades when resisted. Heaven is honest about time because time is one of the few resources that cannot be replenished. Once a window closes, it does not reopen in the same way. If you are feeling a mixture of seriousness and clarity right now, that is intentional. Fear is not the goal. Awareness is. Heaven is not asking you to be afraid of what is coming. Heaven is asking you to respect what is possible if you do nothing. A distinction matters. Respect for consequence produces wisdom. Fear produces paralysis. This message is designed to produce wisdom. The alarm is sounding now because mercy is active now. Mercy does not wait until destruction to speak. Mercy speaks while there is still room to turn, to adjust, to correct. That is why this message exists at all. Silence would have been easier. Indifference would have been simpler. But love intervenes, even when intervention feels uncomfortable. As this part comes to a close, understand this clearly. The timing of this warning is proof that you are not abandoned, forgotten, or unprotected. You are being addressed because you are seen. What comes next will reveal how this tragedy hides within ordinary life and why discernment, not comfort, must lead you forward now. There are signs that indicate you are already closer to the danger zone than you may realize, and the reason they are so often missed is because they do not feel dramatic. They feel internal. They show up as subtle shifts rather than sudden shocks. One of the first signs is a quiet loss of urgency toward things that once mattered deeply. What used to feel important now feels optional. What once stirred conviction now feels negotiable. This is not growth. It is drift. And drift is dangerous precisely because it feels gentle. Another sign is mental and emotional heaviness that has no clear external cause. Life may look fine on the surface, yet something feels off beneath it. You may feel tired even after rest, unmotivated even when circumstances are stable, or distracted even when nothing is pulling at you. This heaviness is often misdiagnosed as stress or burnout, but spiritually, it can signal unresolved obedience. Carrying what you were meant to release, decide, or confront will slowly weigh you down. The longer it remains unaddressed, the heavier it feels. A third indicator is repetition without progress. You keep encountering the same lessons, the same patterns, the same internal conversations, yet nothing changes. This is not coincidence. It is a signal. When heaven wants movement and movement does not happen, situations repeat to get your attention. The danger zone begins when repetition becomes normalized. When you stop asking why the same issues keep returning, you stop resisting what they are trying to reveal. Here is also a relational sign many overlook. You may notice growing distance between you and people who once sharpened you, encouraged you, or challenged you spiritually. At the same time, you may feel more comfortable around voices that affirm delay, comfort, or avoidance. This shift rarely happens consciously. It happens gradually, but alignment always reveals direction. Who you tolerate, listen to, and lean on often reflects where you are headed. Isolation from truth is one of the most effective tools silent tragedy uses. Another warning sign is increased rationalization. You find yourself explaining away convictions instead of responding to them. You tell yourself why now isn't the right time, why the issue isn't that serious, or why addressing it can wait. Rationalization feels intelligent, but spiritually, it is often fear trying to sound reasonable. When explanations replace obedience, the danger zone is already forming. Pay attention also to how you respond to moments of stillness. Silence used to feel peaceful. Now it feels uncomfortable. You stay busy to avoid thinking too deeply. You fill quiet moments with noise, scrolling, or distraction. This is not restlessness by accident. Stillness exposes what noise hides. When something within you needs attention, the mind will seek distraction to avoid confrontation. The tragedy grows in the space where reflection is avoided. A particularly subtle sign is spiritual numbness. You still believe, still pray, still listen, but the sharpness is gone. Messages don't hit the same. Convictions don't linger. Inspiration fades quickly. This numbness is not sudden. It develops when responsiveness decreases over time. Sensitivity is maintained through obedience. When obedience is delayed, sensitivity dulls. And when sensitivity dulls, warnings become easier to ignore. You may also notice a strange contradiction within yourself. You sense that something is wrong, yet you feel oddly calm about it. This false calm is dangerous. It is not peace. Peace comes from alignment. This calm comes from avoidance. It is the emotional equivalent of standing still while something approaches, convincing yourself that motion isn't necessary yet. By the time urgency feels natural, options may be limited. One of the clearest indicators of the danger zone is the feeling that this message feels uncomfortably specific. Not condemning, not accusing, but precise. Precision reveals proximity. General messages pass by easily. Targeted ones stir resistance or recognition. If you feel seen by this warning, it is not to expose you, but to protect you. Awareness is a gift, but only if it leads to response. None of these signs mean damage has already occurred. They mean proximity has increased. And proximity is where intervention still works best. The purpose of identifying these signs is not to create fear, but to restore agency. You are not trapped. You are informed. And information, when acted upon, becomes power. The danger zone is not a sentence. It is a signal that something needs to change before silence becomes consequence. Heaven reveals signs not to overwhelm you, but to give you language for what you have been feeling but could not explain. Recognition is the first step toward redirection. As you sit with this, do not rush past what resonates. Do not dismiss what feels familiar. These signs are not meant to linger. They are meant to move you. What comes next will expose the trap hidden in plain sight and why so many never realize they stepped into it until they are trying to find their way back out. The most dangerous traps are not the ones that look like traps. They are the ones that feel familiar, reasonable, and safe. This is why the tragedy being warned about hides in plain sight. It does not appear as an obvious threat. It blends into routine, into habits, into patterns that once served you but no longer protect you. The trap works because it convinces you that nothing needs to change. And when nothing changes, decline happens quietly. One of the ways this trap operates is through normalization. Small compromises become standard. Missed moments become acceptable. Delayed obedience becomes a pattern rather than an exception. None of these things feel destructive on their own. In fact, they often feel harmless. But traps are not designed to destroy immediately. They are designed to hold, to keep you contained just long enough for strength to fade, for clarity to weaken, for urgency to disappear. By the time you realize you are stuck, moving feels far more difficult than it would have earlier. This trap often disguises itself as routine responsibility. You tell yourself you are just busy, just tired, just dealing with life. And while those things may be true, they become dangerous when they replace attentiveness. Life does not stop being demanding, but discernment cannot be sacrificed in the process. The trap convinces you that survival is enough, that maintaining is success, that coasting is wisdom. But spiritually, stagnation is not neutral. If you are not moving forward, something else is moving you backward. Another way this trap hides is through familiarity. You return to the same environments, the same conversations, the same mental loops, even when they no longer produce growth. Familiarity creates comfort, and comfort lowers guard. What once sharpened you now merely sustains you. What once challenged you now entertains you. This is not because you failed, but because seasons change. Traps form when you refuse to adjust with the season. What protected you in one season can restrict you in another. The tragedy becomes more subtle when the trap uses good things, not harmful things, not obviously wrong choices, but good things taken out of balance. Overcommitment, over-explanation, even overthinking. These things crowd out stillness, clarity, and obedience. When your life becomes too full to hear clearly, the trap has already begun to close. Noise does not have to be sinful to be dangerous. It only has to be distracting. One of the most effective elements of this trap is justification. You justify why you can delay addressing something uncomfortable. You justify why change can wait. You justify why confronting truth feels unnecessary right now. Justification numbs urgency. It gives you reasons that feel responsible, mature, even wise. But wisdom does not ignore inner warnings. Wisdom responds to them. When justifications multiply, it is often because resistance has quietly taken root. The trap also uses gradual desensitization. What once bothered you no longer does. What once stirred conviction now passes unnoticed. This is not growth or maturity. It is adaptation to misalignment. Sensitivity dulls when responsiveness decreases. Over time, the inner alarm becomes quieter, not because danger is gone, but because it hath been ignored too often. This is how people drift far from where they intended to be without ever making a single dramatic decision. Another hidden aspect of the trap is false security. Things may still be working well enough. Relationships still function. Life still moves. You still manage. This creates the illusion that nothing is wrong. But functioning is not the same as thriving. And managing is not the same as being protected. Many tragedies occur not because people were reckless, but because they relied on yesterday's stability to protect them from today's warning. The trap in plain sight is especially dangerous because it does not feel like opposition. It feels like comfort. And comfort, when it replaces obedience, becomes captivity. You stop asking hard questions. You stop examining direction. You stop interrupting patterns. Not because you chose against wisdom, but because comfort slowly convinced you that examination was no longer necessary. Michael's red flag is raised because this trap is effective against sincere people. It does not target rebellion. It targets complacency. It does not attack belief. It attacks alertness. That is why this message keeps returning to awareness. Awareness is the trap's greatest enemy. Once you see it, it loses power. Once you name it, it cannot hide as easily. Light does not have to fight darkness. It only has to enter. This part of the message is meant to expose, not accuse. Exposure restores choice. You cannot avoid a trap you cannot see. But once it is visible, you are no longer helpless. You are responsible. And responsibility is empowering when acted upon. As you absorb this, do not rush to identify external blame. This trap is rarely about others. It is about patterns, habits, delays, comfort zones. And the good news is that what formed gradually can be undone intentionally. What closed slowly can be reopened decisively. What comes next will reveal the instruction that interrupts this trap completely. A moment where awareness must turn into action. And that moment is closer than you think. Now the message shifts from exposure to instruction, because awareness without action is incomplete. Michael's urgency is not just to reveal the danger, but to direct you out of it. There is a specific instruction embedded in this warning, and it is simple, but it is not easy. It requires immediacy, not perfection, not full understanding. Immediate obedience. The kind of obedience that moves before fear finishes its argument. The tragedy being avoided here is not just loss, but hesitation at the moment when movement mattered most. The instruction is this: interrupt the pattern now, not later, not when it feels more comfortable, not when circumstances improve. Now, silent tragedies gain power through continuity. They survive because nothing disrupts them. The moment you interrupt the pattern, mentally, spiritually, practically, the trajectory changes. Heaven is not asking you to solve everything at once. It is asking you to take the first decisive step that proves you are no longer passive. This instruction may look different for each person, but the essence is the same. Address what you have been avoiding. Open what you have kept closed. Say what you have been postponing. Decide what you have been deferring. Obedience here is not loud or dramatic. It is intentional. It is the quiet but firm decision that says, "This will not continue unchecked." The decision alone weakens the trap. Another part of the instruction is to restore spiritual alertness. That means creating space for clarity again. Silence where there hath been noise. Stillness where there has been distraction. Attention where there hath been avoidance. You cannot hear direction clearly when your life is constantly full. Michael's instruction is not to add more, but to remove what dulls discernment. Eliminate the unnecessary. Reduce the excess. Guard your focus. Alertness is regained through intentional simplicity. There is also an instruction to stop negotiating with inner warnings. When you feel the nudge, respond. Do not analyze it endlessly. Do not debate it away. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Negotiation is how urgency dies. Obedience keeps it alive. Heaven is not asking for blind leaps, but it is asking for responsiveness. The longer you respond quickly, the clearer the guidance becomes. Clarity follows obedience, not the other way around. Michael's instruction also includes confronting fear directly. Not suppressing it, not denying it, but naming it. Fear often disguises itself as wisdom, patience, or logic. But when fear keeps you stationary while danger approaches, it is no longer protective. It is paralyzing. The instruction is to move despite fear, not after fear disappears. Courage here is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear decide. There is a relational element to this instruction as well. Distance yourself from voices that normalize delay and align yourself with voices that sharpen urgency. This does not require conflict or confrontation. It requires discernment. Who you listen to will either reinforce obedience or justify avoidance. Michael's instruction is to choose alignment over comfort, support over affirmation, truth over reassurance. Other critical instruction is to mark this moment. Do not treat it as just another message. Treat it as a turning point. Write it down. Pray into it. Acknowledge it. When moments are marked, they carry weight. When they are ignored, they fade. Marking this moment signals to your spirit that something has shifted, that you are no longer drifting unconsciously. Intention anchors change. You may be tempted to wait for a sign that action worked. Do not. Action is the sign. Movement is the confirmation. Heaven responds to obedience, not to observation. The instruction is not to monitor outcomes, but to maintain alignment. Outcomes follow alignment naturally, often quietly at first. Do not underestimate small acts of obedience. They interrupt large consequences. Michael's urgency also carries reassurance. You are not being asked to act alone. Obedience activates assistance. When you move, support moves. When you decide, protection aligns. The instruction is not burdensome because you are not meant to carry it by yourself. But assistance does not activate until movement begins. Standing still delays help. This part of the message is where responsibility becomes empowerment. You are no longer just being warned. You are being trusted with instruction. Trusted to act. Trusted to choose differently. Trusted to interrupt what was quietly advancing. That trust is significant. It means heaven believes your response still matters. As you prepare for what comes next, understand this. Action creates separation. Separation between what could have been lost and what will now be preserved. The next part will show you the contrast between acting now and delaying further, and why the difference between the two outcomes is greater than most people realize. There are two paths standing in front of you now, and they do not look dramatic at first glance. That is what makes this moment so deceptive. Both paths appear ordinary. Both feel familiar. But their outcomes could not be more different. What separates them is not circumstance, not intelligence, not resources, but response. What happens if you act now versus what happens if you don't is the difference between interruption and impact, between correction and collapse, between relief and regret. If you act now, the first thing that happens is subtle but powerful. Pressure lifts. Not all at once, not magically, but noticeably. The internal heaviness begins to loosen. Clarity starts to return in small ways. Decisions that felt confusing become simpler. This is because alignment restores flow. When you respond to what heaven reveals, resistance weakens. The silent tension that has been following you no longer has the same grip, because it was sustained by delay. Acting now also activates protection. Protection does not always look like dramatic rescue. Often, it looks like redirection. Situation shift either. Conversations take unexpected turns. Doors you were about to walk through close without force. Opportunities that would have drained you lose their appeal. This is not coincidence. This is intervention working behind the scenes. When you act in time, you rarely see what was prevented, but you feel the peace of knowing something changed. There is also an internal strengthening that happens when you act now. Confidence returns, not the loud kind, but the steady kind. You trust yourself again. You trust your discernment again. Obedience rebuilds self-respect because it reminds you that you can respond to truth even when it is uncomfortable. Its strength compounds over time. Each timely decision makes the next one easier. Momentum begins to work for you instead of against you. But if you don't act, the contrast is just as real, though slower to reveal itself. Delay does not immediately punish you. It waits. It allows comfort to deepen, numbness to settle, and sensitivity to fade. Over time, the inner warnings become quieter, not because the danger passed, but because the signal was overridden too often. When clarity fades, confusion increases. Decisions become heavier. Everything requires more effort than it should. If you don't act, small issues remain unresolved and quietly expand. What could have been corrected early requires more energy later. What could have been addressed privately becomes visible publicly. What could have been prevented turns into something you must recover from. This is where the phrase "you will cry" becomes painfully real. Not because tears were inevitable, but because they were avoidable. The most painful part of not acting is not the loss itself. It is the memory. The memory of knowing you felt the warning. The memory of hearing the nudge. The memory of saying later. Regret does not come from ignorance. It comes from recognition without response. And regret lingers far longer than discomfort ever would have. This is why heaven does not remain neutral in moments like this. The urgency in this message exists because the difference between the two outcomes is wider than it appears. One leads to quiet relief. The other leads to quiet grief. One produces gratitude you may never fully explain. The other produces questions you may never fully answer. Before this message moves forward, there is a sacred pause here. A pause not for fear, but for alignment. What you are hearing is not just meant to inform you, but to mobilize you. And mobilization does not stop with one person. It multiplies. This is where the mission expands. When you act in obedience, you help others act too. When you support this work, you are not funding content. You are helping interrupt silent tragedies in lives you may never meet. Scripture speaks of light breaking through darkness, of seed producing harvest, of oil flowing where vessels are prepared. I feel compelled to say this plainly. When you give here, you are responding to a divine moment, not a human appeal. Use Super Thanks, step into membership, or give through PayPal using the link in the description or the QR code on the screen. As you sow, I declare that obedience will become easier for you, discernment sharper, and protection stronger over your life and household. Do not delay what is meant to move now. The reason this choice feels weighty is because it is. But weight does not mean burden. It means significance. You are standing at a point where response determines direction. Heaven has shown you both outcomes so you can choose wisely, not blindly. Hold on to this moment. What comes next will reveal why many people wait too long to respond and how to recognize the final signals before silence turns into consequence. You will be glad you stayed for what's about to be revealed. Type "I choose to ACT" in the comments if this message stirred you. Blessing code 639 is now activated. This is the moment where response becomes personal. Up until now, you have been listening, discerning, weighing what applies to you. But now the message turns and looks directly at you, not as part of a crowd, but as an individual. This is your moment to respond because messages like this do not find people randomly. They find people who are positioned at a decision point. The timing, the resonance, the discomfort you feel listening, none of that is accidental. You are here because something in you is being called forward. Response does not always mean dramatic action. Sometimes response begins with acknowledgement. Acknowledging that this message is about you. Acknowledging that something needs to shift. Acknowledging that delay has been more costly than you wanted to admit. Silence loses power the moment it is acknowledged. And when acknowledgement turns into response, direction changes. Many people miss moments like this because they assume response requires certainty. It does not. It requires willingness. You do not need to see 10 steps ahead. You only need to take the one being revealed now. Heaven rarely reveals the full path before movement begins. Clarity unfolds as you walk, not before you start. Waiting for total certainty is often just another form of delay wearing a spiritual disguise. This is also where courage shows itself in a quiet way. Courage is not always bold declarations or visible changes. Sometimes courage is simply choosing not to ignore what you now see, choosing not to numb what you now feel, choosing not to postpone what you now know requires attention. These choices may seem small, but they create separation between who you were drifting toward and who you are now becoming. Responding in this moment also strengthens spiritual authority. Authority grows when you act in alignment with truth. The more consistently you respond, the more confident you become in your discernment. You stop second-guessing every nudge. You stop doubting every conviction. You begin to trust that when something is revealed, it is because you are meant to respond, not retreat. There is also a communal dimension to response. When one person responds, it creates momentum for others. Silence thrives in isolation. Awareness spreads through connection. This is why engagement matters, not as a metric but as a marker. When you engage, you are saying, I am not just hearing this, I am responding to it. If this message resonates with you, take a moment to respond actively. Like this video as a declaration that you are choosing awareness over avoidance. Leave a comment sharing what stood out to you or simply acknowledging that you are responding now. Your words matter more than you realize. They create accountability, and accountability sustains change. Share this message with someone who may be standing at their own silent crossroads, because warnings are most powerful when they arrive in time. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel so you remain connected to messages meant to sharpen discernment and keep you alert during critical moments like this. Response is also about consistency. One moment of clarity must be followed by continued attentiveness. Do not treat this as a single emotional experience. Treat it as the beginning of a new pattern. A pattern of listening quickly, acting promptly, adjusting willingly. This is how protection is maintained over time, not just activated once. There is a reason the message says, open it now. Doors do not stay open indefinitely. Opportunities to adjust quietly close when ignored. This does not mean catastrophe happens immediately. It means correction becomes harder. The cost increases. Response now is lighter than recovery later. This truth is not meant to pressure you, but to empower you. As you respond, you may notice resistance trying to surface. Thoughts telling you this is too much, too serious, too intense. That resistance is not your enemy, but it is a signal. It signals that something important is shifting. Growth often feels disruptive before it feels stabilizing. Do not let temporary discomfort talk you out of permanent clarity. This is also the moment to decide how you will handle future warnings. Will you respond quickly, or will you wait for louder signs? The pattern you choose now becomes the precedent you follow later. Responding here trains you to respond again. Delay trains you to delay again. Patterns are formed in moments like this, not in crises. Before moving forward, pause and reflect on this question. What would change in your life if you took inner warnings seriously the first time? Not the third time. Not after consequences appear. The first time. That question alone holds power. Sit with it. What comes next will bring everything together and reveal the deeper meaning behind opening the door now, before silence turns into sorrow. Stay present. What follows is not just explanation, but invitation. What is about to be revealed will connect every part of this message in a way that makes the urgency unmistakably clear. When the message says, "Open it now," it is speaking about a door that many people sense but hesitate to touch. This door is not always physical. Often is internal. A door of truth. A door of decision. A door of surrender. A door of courage. Doors like this do not force themselves open. They wait for consent. And the tragedy is not that the door exists, but that it remains unopened while silence does its work. This door represents access. Access to clarity you have been circling around but not stepping into. Access to correction that would realign you but feels uncomfortable. Access to freedom that requires letting go of something familiar. Doors are threshold. On one side is what you know. On the other side is what you need. Standing at a threshold too long creates tension, because you are no longer fully in one place or the other. The tension is what many people feel right now. Opening this door requires honesty. Honesty about what is not working. Honesty about what you have been avoiding. Honesty about where delay has replaced obedience. This honesty is not about self-judgment. It is about self-awareness. Silence thrives where honesty is absent. The moment honesty enters, silence loses ground. You do not need to have all the answers to open this door. You only need to stop pretending that nothing needs to change. The reason urgency surrounds this door is because doors do not stay open forever. Opportunities to adjust quietly close when ignored. Not with a loud slam, but with gradual resistance. What once felt accessible begins to feel distant. What once felt clear becomes confusing. This is not punishment. It is consequence. Timing matters. Opening the door now is easier than forcing it later. Many people hesitate because they fear what opening the door will require. Will it demand change? Yes. Will it require courage? Yes. Will it disrupt comfort? Possibly. But what it gives in return far outweighs what it costs. Behind this door is alignment. And alignment restores peace in ways comfort never can. Comfort numbs. Alignment stabilizes. Another reason people hesitate is because they want certainty before opening the door. They want assurance that everything will work out. But doors of growth rarely offer guarantees before obedience. They offer direction. Certainty follows movement, not the other way around. The demand for certainty before obedience is one of the main reasons doors remain closed longer than they should. Opening this door also means releasing control. Control is often mistaken for safety. But control without clarity creates anxiety. When you try to manage outcomes instead of respond to instruction, pressure increases. Opening the door shifts the burden. You move from managing to aligning. From resisting to responding. From maintaining to moving forward. There is also a spiritual weight attached to unopened doors. Not because they are wrong, but because they represent unresolved obedience. Unresolved obedience lingers. It occupies mental and emotional space. It drains energy. Many people feel tired not because they are doing too much, but because they are carrying decisions they were meant to make. Opening the door releases that weight. This door is not about perfection. You do not open it because you are ready. You open it because you are willing. Willingness is enough. Heaven does not demand flawless execution. It honors responsive hearts. The act of opening is more important than what happens immediately after. Opening signals trust. Trust activates guidance. There is also a warning embedded here. Doors that remain unopened do not stay neutral. Over time, they become harder to open. Not because heaven closes them out of anger, but because resistance builds. Fear grows roots. Comfort deepens. Urgency fades. This is how people look back and say, "I wish I had acted sooner." This message exists so that sentence does not become yours. As you consider this door, pay attention to what rises within you. Resistance often reveals where growth is needed most. Fear often points to where freedom is closest. Discomfort often marks the edge of transformation. These sensations are not signs to retreat. They are signs you are standing in the right place. Opening the door does not mean everything changes overnight. It means direction changes, trajectory shifts, and trajectory determines outcome. Many tragedies are not sudden events, but slow movements in the wrong direction. Opening this door corrects direction before distance becomes too great. This part of the message is an invitation, not a threat. An invitation to choose responsiveness over regret, courage over comfort, alignment over avoidance. You are not being rushed into chaos. You are being called into clarity. What comes next will bring this message to its final posture. A reminder that even now, mercy stands present, and the door is still within reach. But it will also make clear why waiting any longer carries a cost that does not need to be paid. Even with the intensity and urgency carried throughout this message, one truth must be made unmistakably clear before anything else is said. Mercy is still standing at the door. The very existence of this warning proves it. If it were already too late, there would be no interruption, no red flag, no call to act. Silence would have already finished its work. But silence has been confronted, and that confrontation is mercy in motion. This moment exists because heaven has not given up on you, and because what is at stake is still recoverable, still protectable, still worth intervening for. Mercy is often misunderstood. Many think mercy means unlimited time, endless tolerance, or consequences that never arrive. But mercy does not erase reality. Mercy delays it long enough to allow response. Mercy creates a window, not an excuse. It provides space for correction before damage becomes permanent. The window is what you are standing in now. It is not meant to create fear, but clarity. Not anxiety, but urgency with purpose. Mercy speaks before collapse, not after. This is why the warning feels firm. Mercy does not whisper when danger is near. It raises its voice. It disrupts comfort. It challenges delay. Not because love is harsh, but because love is protective. Indifference stays silent. Mercy intervenes. An intervention, by nature, interrupts what feels familiar. That interruption is not meant to shame you. It is meant to save you from regret you do not need to carry. There is reassurance woven deeply into this message, even if it has not always sounded gentle. You are not being asked to undo your past. You are not being asked to explain every delay or justify every hesitation. Mercy does not require you to relive what already happened. It invites you to respond to what is happening now. The present moment is where mercy operates. Not yesterday, but tomorrow. Now. And response in the present has more power than regret about the past ever will. Many people fear that acting now means admitting failure. It does not. Acting now means choosing wisdom. It means choosing humility over pride, responsiveness over resistance, alignment over avoidance. Mercy does not expose you to condemn you. It covers you as you move forward. It supports transition. It strengthens resolve. It walks with you through adjustment, not against you. Another important truth is that mercy does not wait forever. This is not sent to friend, but to be honest. Windows exist because timing matters. Opportunities that are ignored do not remain identical when they return, if they return at all. This does not mean abandonment. It means seasons change. Mercy gives you the advantage of early response. Late response is still response, but it often carries heavier consequences. This message exists to keep you in the lighter season, not the heavier one. Mercy also brings protection, but protection follows alignment. It does not override refusal. It responds to movement. When you turn toward what hath been revealed, even imperfectly, protection begins to surround that decision. Path shift. Pressure lessens. What felt inevitable loses momentum. These changes are often quiet, but they are real. Mercy works beneath the surface long before results are visible. There is also restoration attached to mercy, but restoration does not always look like reversal. Sometimes it looks like preservation, preserving what could have been lost, preserving clarity, preserving peace, preserving direction. Many people think restoration only applies after damage, but mercy specializes in preventing damage in the first place. That is what makes it so valuable. That is what makes this moment so important. If you are feeling conflicted, serious yet hopeful, sober yet strengthened, that is not confusion. That is balance. This message is meant to hold both warning and assurance at the same time. Warning without hope leads to fear. Hope without warning leads to complacency. Mercy holds both because both are necessary for change that lasts. It is also vital to understand this. Delay does not define you. Hesitation does not cancel calling. Struggle does not erase purpose. What matters most is what you do when clarity arrives. And clarity has arrived. Heaven measures direction more than distance. A single turn in the right direction carries more weight than years of drifting ever could. Mercy also reminds you that you are not alone in this moment. Many are being awakened simultaneously. Many are sensing urgency, conviction, and the need for course correction. This is not isolation. This is alignment on a larger scale. Heaven moves in patterns, not just individuals. You are part of a wider moment of awakening, even if your response is personal. As this part draws to a close, let this settle deeply within you. The door is still open. Not forced. Not closed. Open. The warning is still active. The opportunity is still present. That alone is evidence of mercy. Do not take that lightly. But do not fear it either. Let it steady you. Let it focus you. Let it move you. The final part will bring everything together. It will close this message not with dread, but with strength. Not with uncertainty, but with assurance. Not with silence, but with peace that follows obedience. This is the final moment of this message, and it is not meant to leave you in fear, but in strength. Everything you have heard leads to this closing truth. The warning was never about tragedy itself, but about prevention, protection, and positioning. Michael's red flag was raised not to announce loss, but to stop it. What felt intense was not condemnation. It was love refusing to stay silent while there was still time to act. And now, as this message closes, you are meant to stand not anxious but assured. The silent tragedy was revealed so it could be interrupted. The urgency was spoken so delay could be broken. The door was shown so it could be opened. You were never meant to leave this message wondering what to do. You were meant to leave it grounded in clarity. You are not powerless. You are not trapped. You are not behind beyond repair. You are informed, awakened, and still within the window where response changes outcomes. If you have listened this far, it is because something in you recognized the weight of this moment. Recognition is not coincidence. It is alignment. And alignment always carries responsibility. Not pressure, but purpose. The responsibility now is not to fear what could have happened, but to move confidently in what can still be preserved. That is where peace comes from, not from ignoring danger, but from responding to truth. Understand this clearly. Obedience does not remove challenges from life, but it removes unnecessary sorrow. Acting now does not mean life becomes effortless. It means life becomes directed. Direction is what prevents regret. Direction is what protects peace. Direction is what turns warnings into wisdom instead of memories. There is assurance here. You are not late. You are on time. This message reached you before silence became consequence. That alone is grace. Grace does not excuse delay forever, but it empowers response now. And response now is enough. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to have everything figured out. You only need to be willing to move in the direction you have been shown. As this message ends, let go of fear-based thinking. Fear says, what if it's too late? Wisdom says, I will act while it's still possible. Fear looks backward. Wisdom looks forward. You are being invited into wisdom, not anxiety. Into decisiveness, not dread. Into peace that comes from alignment, not comfort that fades quickly. Now, hear this final encouragement. When you act on divine warnings, you do not walk alone. Support aligns. Protection activates. Strength follows. Many of the battles you feared never materialized because direction changed early. Many of the tears you imagined never fall because obedience intervened. This is the unseen mercy that follows those who respond in time. Before closing, this mission must be anchored properly. Messages like this exist to reach people before it's too late, not after. When you support this work, you are not giving to a channel. You are helping light reach others standing at their own silent crossroads. Scripture speaks of seed that multiplies, of oil that keeps lamps burning, of light that drives out darkness. I speak this directly to you now. When you sow into this mission through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal using the link in the description or the QR code on the screen, you are responding to a divine moment. Your giving becomes a prophetic act. I declare that as you give, clarity will increase in your life, obedience will feel lighter, and protection will surround your household. Do not delay what is meant to move now. Act. As we close, let this settle in your spirit. You were warned because you were valued. You were awakened because you were protected. You were urged because your future matters. This message does not end in fear. It ends in assurance. The red flag was not raised to stop you. It was raised to guide you. Stand firm. Move wisely. Respond promptly. And walk forward knowing that mercy met you before tragedy ever could. Type I walk in wisdom in the comments if you are choosing alignment today. Blessing code 902 is now activated.